Top US politicians are demanding whistleblower Edward Snowden be extradited to the US and prosecuted to the greatest extent of the law. That's after he disclosed details of an unprecedented US surveillance web. The 29-year-old former CIA contractor, until Monday, was holed up in a Hong Kong hotel, afraid to even leave his room for fear of retribution. But he says he has no regrets over what he did. And as RT's Marina Portnaya reports, Washington's condemnation of Snowden is being tempered by public support for his actions.
Braving some very wet and chilly weather, dozens of New Yorkers have come out into the street to show their solidarity and support with NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. This, of course, coming just 24 hours after the 29-year-old revealed himself as the man who handed over classified documents to The Guardian, which then exposed the National Security Agency's program, PRISM. Now, PRISM allowed the National Security Agency's extensive internet spying on records of digital communication and allowed the government agency to surveil U.S. citizens in real time. Now, the revelations that have come about through Snowden's leak, of course, challenges the ongoing war on terror. For nearly 12 years, the U.S. government has changed its policies, changed legislation in the name of which they said was to keep Americans safe. Wars waged overseas and privacy eroding here at home. Those American citizens that we've spoken with say that Snowden's sacrifice should not be in vain, and there needs to be a bigger dialogue about the way in which the U.S. government is acting behind the backs of its own citizens. Now, of course, this blockbuster of a story has caused many to wonder if the U.S. government will still move forward, lecturing and pointing fingers at other countries such as Iran and China for the way in which it deals with its citizens, after now it has been revealed to the entire world that the U.S. is keeping very close tabs on everything that Americans are doing, at home and even abroad. Reporting from New York, Marina Portnaya, RT.
Well, for more on this story, we're joined live now by John Levy, who's the Internet Campaign Director at the Free Press Activist Group. Thanks for joining us here on RT today. Now, the US government has opened a criminal investigation. How far will they go, do you think? Is Snowden going to end up like the WikiLeaks source, Bradley Manning?
Well, I can't really speculate on what his fate is. Unfortunately, I think that lies with, as you said, with the U.S. government. I think that there's a lot of support for Snowden, and there's a lot of public support in the way that there never really was for Bradley Manning. And I think that's in part because people are seeing more moral authority in the case of Snowden. They're seeing that he really did do the right thing as far as he's concerned, and many millions of others are concerned, and he didn't put any lives in danger. And so people are being very careful to differentiate him, and I think that for that reason, and because of all of that public support, I think it's going to be harder for the U.S. government to press forward with the case in silence.
And the extent of the PRISM program has drawn anger, hasn't it, from European officials. Will this hurt security cooperation on both sides of the Atlantic?
You know, it's hard for me to comment on that, too. You know, my concern is not actually whether it'll hurt cooperation between large governments talking back and forth, but what it means for the broader movement to protect our freedoms and our online rights. And I actually think that Snowden's, work in releasing all of this information has been a boon to people who have been working for years to try to get the word out about government surveillance programs and the harms that they present to regular everyday people who are trying to use the internet for communications and to actually engage in democracy and in political action.
But with your experience dealing with internet freedom issues, I mean, will these revelations embolden perhaps other countries to act in a similar way?
It's possible. I suppose we'll have to wait and see. I think, again, it may embolden governments to act in certain ways, but it will also embolden regular internet users to stand up for their rights and to actually be more protective of things that they realize are slipping away from them every day.
Now, Edward Snowden says he exposed the program in the hope that, well, by informing the public, it would mean closing it down. But will he be successful? How likely is that to happen?
Well, I think it's more likely today than it was last week, that's for sure. A, because we know that the program exists, and B, because of all of the momentum that this is giving to movements that have been around for a long time. I think a lot of people who didn't know the extent of this kind of spying have now woken up to it and are outraged, and they're shocked that their own governments are engaging in these practices that remind a lot of us of the Cold War and of things that were going on in places like East Germany during that time. And I don't think any of us want to see that happen now. So I think that, yes, it's more likely that these will get shut down, or at least that certain laws that enable these widespread surveillance programs to exist will be reformed to protect people's privacy.
But the president and his chief of intelligence defend the surveillance, don't they, saying that it helps protect the country. Does it enhance security?
I'm not a security analyst, so I can't really answer that question. All I can say is that it makes a lot of sense that the president and others in his administration would defend the program. It's a program that they've been overseeing, that they inherited from the Bush administration. They obviously believe in it because they've been executing it all these years. That doesn't mean that it's right, and it doesn't mean that it can't end, and it doesn't mean that the president is immune from public pressure. And so I think you're going to see a lot of public pressure starting up in the days to come. Tomorrow, I think you're going to see a lot of public pressure coming from the grassroots specifically, and he's going to be forced to respond to it in some way.